It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. Great to have you in studio today. Steve Everett's back with us, Yavapai County Community Health Services epidemiologist. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
We were just talking. It's been about 3 to 4 years since you've been here.
Yes.
That is nuts how fast time flies.
It is.
But we say that a lot on the show because I get people to come back in, and next thing I know, it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you for all that many years, but we all seem to look the same, it seems. Website for you, yavapaihealth.com, yavapaihealth.com. Stephen, we did a story back on the 19th of June, and matter of fact, we've been talking about this now for several months about rabies, but it said rabies cases in the state continue to climb. The state health department was urging community members to follow prevention guidelines. I'm reading the story that we had here to stay safe from the disease, of course. As of May 31st, there had been 77 rabid animals reported, compared with 54 at the same time last year.
Yes.
As of the end of May.
Yeah, in Arizona.
In Arizona.
Yes.
We're talking about just Arizona right now. And this is both, mostly rural counties are reporting these. Yavapai, Coconino counties included. We both have had, Yavapai County has had some rabid cases? No?
Just a few.
Just a few.
Foxes,
okay.
mainly.
Okay. It's the foxes and the skunks that seem to be the
Right. It
the
tends to
main
be
carriers.
Foxes up here in the north, skunks down in the south.
Okay. That's weird.
Not really.
Not really?
Because in different areas, there's different types of rabies that affect animals. And so they have like a fox strain of rabies, a skunk strain of rabies, a bat strain of rabies. You can still get the other strains, but one tends to be in the majority.
I was going to ask you, so if a skunk with rabies bit a fox, would the fox get the skunk strain of rabies?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because I guess they don't single each other. Oh, you're the skunk. I'm going to give you the skunk rabies. But no.
No, rabid animals tend not to be very particular on who they bite.
But if you take rabies out of a skunk and rabies out of a fox, it looks different.
Just a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
it's like the flu. I mean, you have different strains of flu, but they're still going to cause the same thing.
Okay.
In terms of symptoms.
Okay. So at the time of May 31st, most of the animals identified, we just talked about, skunks and foxes, 25 rabid skunks and 31 foxes had tested positive for rabies between January of this year and May of this year.
Yes.
And then it's at the very end of the story, and I thought was kind of interesting, that we were expecting an increase in rabid bats due to the warm weather.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we know why we're seeing an increase in rabies cases this year?
Not really. The thing is that, we're on an urban wilderness interface.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of wilderness out there. And so we don't really know what's happening out in the wilderness with animals. I mean, if you go out in the wilderness, how many times have you ever seen a wild fox?
I can't say I ever have.
Yeah, or bobcat, cougar.
Skunks, you rarely see the wildlife.
Yeah. And so you don't know what's happening out there. So, for example, I don't know if you remember that when we had the plague cases up in Jerome, and with the cat,
The cats,
cat got sick
yes.
with plague. We went out there, and by the time we found out, all the rats had already died off, and the carriers. So it was already over before we even knew it began. So it's the same thing with rabies. We don't know what's going on out in the wild. So we only know when the wild comes in and it starts affecting where people are.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Is rabies kind of a mystery? It seems like, because I was telling you prior to the show, I think it was back in '99, we had a big rabies outbreak we were talking about how it was in the Flagstaff region in Coconino County, and they were actually, the rabies was so bad at the time that they were taking those vaccine packets that they brought some in, and I believe they almost had kind of a fishy, oily smell to them.
Yep.
And they were placing them in certain areas around the city so that the animals would come, not rabid animals, but regular skunks and foxes would find them, eat them, and then they would be vaccinated.
Yes.
And then they even went to the extent of putting these packets in an airplane and flying the perimeter around Flagstaff in the forest area and just raining those down over the forest so that animals would find them and eat them as well. Are we at that stage?
Not that I'm aware. I haven't heard anything from the state health department regarding that. Definitely not up here. We're not seeing the cases like we did a few years ago when we were having the wildcats attacking people with a wildcat walked into the bar.
Bobcat in the bar. Everyone's seen
Yeah.
that video, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the woman who was jogging, and the fox bit her on the arm, and she ran like 2 miles with the fox on her arm to get back to her car. That was an interesting one.
Yeah,
But
they're all pretty.
they're always great stories. Yes.
They're always very bizarre stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess this year we've had several cases. I know the West Fork Trail area in Oak Creek Canyon has come up at least twice now with rabid foxes. East Flagstaff has talked about having foxes come up. And then we even had a case of a rabid javelina. Do you know anything about the rabid javelina?
Not too much, but pretty much any mammal can get rabies. So anywhere from the apex predators like cougars all the way down to mice essentially. But we really don't worry about the vermin because if it's close enough to get bitten, it's close enough that it was already eaten.
Yeah.
So it's mainly just...
That's true.
Yeah,
it's been ingested.
Yeah, so we mainly worry about foxes, skunks, bats, wildcats. Cougars have it. I can't remember if we've ever had a cougar human attack. I don't think we have.
I don't think with rabies, no.
Yeah. Actually, I think we had one where they shot the cougar, and then they found out afterwards that it had rabies.
Oh, wow.
And so we had the hunters vaccinated because when they were skinning and stuff, just to make sure that they didn't get any inside them.
Right. Maybe we should start at the beginning. Just what is rabies?
Rabies is a virus. It affects the nervous system. So if anyone's seen Cujo, it tends to make the animal go crazy. Or one variation makes the animal go crazy. There's actually another. In some animals, it causes paralysis. So the direct opposite, they'll just
I didn't know that.
Paralyze, yeah.
Okay.
But usually it's the more violent one that you have to worry about. And essentially, the animals go insane. It attacks the brain. So they essentially don't know what they're doing. So you'll see foxes who usually avoid people go right up to them. They have absolutely no fear. And so that's how people get bitten. As soon as you see an animal, if the animal's friendly, it's probably sick. So you want to avoid it whenever possible.
Mm-hmm. And the other one causes paralysis. So
yes.
They get rabies and they just can't move anymore?
Right. But it's more dependent on the animal than it is on the strain of rabies.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. What is it rabies doing? You said it attacks the brain, but
yes.
It's got to be a horrible way to die, and they've got to be going through quite a bit of misery.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If it works its way through the nervous system. So what it isn't in the blood. So, but when you get bit, it'll find a nerve and then use the nerve to travel up to the brain. And that can affect how long it takes for you to get sick from exposure. The longest has been where it was confirmed was 7 years from being bitten to getting sick.
What?
So it depends. If you get bit, say if you get bit on your pinky toe by a bat, just get a little bit, it has to take years to go up the nerves to get to the brain.
Oh my gosh.
Whereas if a cougar chomps on your head, it's very close. Though in that case, probably rabies is your least worry.
Right.
But it's close, so you get much more, and it gets in.
That is insane. So I'm picturing it as being something like a rattlesnake bite. I get bit. Yes. It's just pumping through my body, but it could take a very long time.
Oh yeah. When you get a really big dose, it takes about 10 days from the inoculation to getting sick. But that's the minimum, and they really don't know what the maximum is. I mean, they just happen to be able to confirm it, but they think up to 12, 20 years it can be in your system, don't know it, and you just come down with it.
The shows I've done about rabies, I got to say that each person I've had come in and talk about it, it does seem like, and we got to take a break real quick, but it does seem there's a lot of mystery around it, and we don't know as much as we probably wish we knew about rabies.
Right.
But Yavapai County Health Department epidemiologist Steve Everett in studio today. Their website is yavapaihealth.com. This is Countywide, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Making was a big part of the foundation of what I wanted my children to do and to have fun with.
Growing up in the Bushnell house was like nutty professor craziness. I know, that's true.
Getting burned on a hot glue gun, that was okay. You know, burning themselves with a soldering iron, that was okay.
I was 6 when I learned how to solder.
We learned how to paint, we learned how to sheetrock, and all these things had such lasting impact.
I felt that creativity would give them entree into being able to do anything they wanted.
Whatever we showed our dad, it was always the coolest thing in the world to him.
Good ideas are very often considered silly at their onset.
And by that definition, we haven't even really grown up, you know? I mean, the projects have just gotten bigger.
We all make and have fun. Now the question is, why do you make?
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking rabies with Yavapai County Health Department epidemiologist Steve Everett. Their website again is yavapaihealth.com. We're talking about kind of the mysteries of rabies,
Yes.
and it just seems like we don't know probably as much as we'd like to. Let's talk about a little bit about what can happen to us. Now, are there any actual human cases of rabies ever confirmed?
Yes, but they're very rare in the
Okay.
United States. Usually only a couple cases a year.
Okay.
But it's people essentially who don't get treated. Either they don't know they got bitten, or they do get bitten and don't report it. So, and then they're infected, and then it goes on. They don't know it until they start showing symptoms.
That's my next question right there, is symptoms, because you say it attacks the brain. So
Yes.
I'm picturing something like carbon monoxide, where it's happening around you, but you don't know it's happening, and all of a sudden, when it finally does happen, it might be too late.
Yes.
So what is rabies?
Yeah,
like?
with rabies, as soon as you show the symptoms, it's too late.
What are the symptoms?
Symptoms, you're going to have mental issues, essentially go insane. You're going to, remember, one of the terms of hydrophobia is because you can't drink. Your throat kind of closes up, and actually drinking water hurts. So that's why, so they tend to avoid water. Excessive salivation because you're not swallowing. So that's why you get the foaming at the mouth. But yeah, it's not an easy way to go.
It sounds brutal.
Yes.
It really does. And okay, wow, that sounds brutal. So how is it that we can contract rabies?
It would be through the saliva of the animal. And so it would be bitten, or if you have open wounds on your hand and saliva gets into them, that can also cause infection.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you're exposed to an animal that you think is rabid, or get bitten by an animal, especially a wild animal, you want to get checked out and see if you're at risk for rabies.
Can we test for rabies in a human? Can you, if I got bitten by something, can you just draw blood out of me? And
No.
There is no.
There's no way to test for it because it's not in the blood; it's in the nervous system.
Okay.
So it can't test for it, and the problem with it, as soon as you show the symptoms, then it's over. They can't be treated. But before you show the symptoms, as I mentioned, it's like it can go up to 7 years. Anytime in that 7 years, that person could have been treated with vaccine, and that probably would have saved his life.
Okay. Wow. Now I know Rainbow Bridge, as you head over to Payson.
Yes.
That's always an area where I don't want to single it out, but typically over the years we've gotten stories from them, especially during the summer months, because it's very heavy tourists and stuff. And just this story mentioning that we're expecting to see an increase in bats, rabid bats showing up. We'll get stories every now and again, but the Rainbow Bridge just happens to come into my head that some dead bats were found laying on the ground, and they'll put something out that says, you know, if you were visiting Rainbow Bridge between this date and this date, if you came into contact with a dead bat, you should probably go get checked out. I know it's just a precaution, but if the animal's dead, it doesn't seem like I should, if I picked up a dead bat and held it in my hand and looked at it, why I would do that, I don't know. But if I did, how would I be getting it that way? It
would be low risk. The only way would be if you're near the mouth, they have razor sharp teeth, and they can cut you and you not even feel it. And they're tiny, so you won't even necessarily see it. So that's why you want to avoid dead animals. If like you pick it up by the outside of the wings, you're a lot safer than you would if you just grabbed it and your finger is near its mouth. But you always want to watch out because one of the symptoms is the drooling. If it's a recently dead bat, the saliva is still wet. There's a risk. If it's dry, there's really no risk. The virus would have died as soon as it dried out.
Okay. Now, okay, that's interesting. So if I did find a bat, if the saliva is dry, then the virus is dead.
Right. Well, at least on the outside.
On the outside.
If it's in the mouth and it's still moist because it's more protected in there, there's a chance.
Okay. All right.
So usually, like when we have bobcat attacks, if it's like a fox attack and it's just scratched, we don't worry about it so much. But if it's like a bobcat because they have the retractable claws, and if they're drooling on their paws, it might be wet in there on their claws.
Cleaning the paws.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. You know, cleaning the paws. You see cats do it all the time. I mean, they're passionate about their paws. So.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's interesting.
So we worry about that.
Okay, all right. Well, that makes total sense. All right. So don't be picking up dead animals.
Nope, don't pick up dead animals.
Okay, don't do that. All right. So
and not just for rabies, because there's a lot of other diseases you can catch off a dead animal. We were talking about plague earlier. Plague is carried by fleas. So if you pick up a dead animal that died of plague, there's fleas on there that are looking for a new meal. So they'll jump right on you and bite you, and then you're at risk.
That's the one thing we didn't really hear too much about is the plague population on the prairie dogs up north this year. We really didn't hear too much about that, but you hear about the prairie dogs disappearing in an area because the fleas are sitting right there around the burrows just waiting for them to come up. So we didn't hear too much about that. All right, so what we've had is a couple of the stories that we've had this year is that the foxes is on the trail. Someone's on the trail and they see this fox coming towards them, and for some reason they let this fox walk right up to them and bite them. And you mentioned earlier in the show that if you got an animal, a wild animal, an animal that's supposed to be wild, in the wild, walking up to you, odds are it's not going to be a good thing.
Exactly.
So what should I be doing when I encounter something like this?
So if you see a fox on the trail and it's coming up to you, try to scare it at first, because wild animals should be afraid of humans, because we're a lot bigger. So try to scare it off. It's still approaching you. Start walking back. Don't run, because they're predators, and they'll just start chasing you just because that's what they do. If it's too close where you don't think you get away fast enough, just pick up rocks, start throwing rocks at them. Just do anything you can to get them away from you.
Okay. I've seen videos of rabid animals. They look intoxicated.
It's not pretty.
And you can hear the people laughing, say, "Oh, look at that raccoon! It's drunk in this, and it's staggering and it's stumbling and it can't stay up on its feet." It's really a sad thing to see.
Yes.
Because the amount of torture that's going through on them. But yeah, if it's acting weird and like we've been saying, a skunk's not going to. Well, I've actually had skunks walk up to me while I'm camping. Yeah. I just sit still and say, "How you doing? Please don't get mad at me." But a fox especially, if these animals are walking up to you, they should not be walking up to you. And then let's take our next break. We got to take our next break. We're not going to have enough time for the show. YavaPaiHealth.com is the website. We're talking with epidemiologist Steve Everett about rabies. Stick around, countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
How I define making In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason, and that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made: painting, sculpture, welding, all of that.
Yellow is positive.
When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back. We've got just a few minutes left in the program. How do we test for rabies in animals, Stephen?
Test for rabies in animals? There's no way to test an animal and keep it alive because they have to test brain tissue. So essentially what they do is they cut off the head of the animal, send it down to the state lab. The state lab opens up the brain case, takes brain tissue, tests that. So any animal, any wild animal, that would be the way to do it. If they don't want to cut off the head, what they can do is put it into quarantine, and it would be in quarantine for, like, say if you get bit by a dog, and catch the dog is put in quarantine for 10 days, and if it goes through the 10 days without showing any symptoms, you're not at risk.
Okay.
Yeah, even if it shows symptoms on the 11th day. As long as it makes the 10 days, you're not at risk.
So if I'm attacked by something out in the wild, fox, skunk, whatever it may be, and it bites me, odds are it'd probably be a better thing to get a hold of that animal, keep that animal.
If you can catch it, yeah.
If you can catch it safely, I guess.
Yes.
You don't want to be carrying rabid animals around, but
yep.
Because they do have to be tested. Now, the other thing is if the animal doesn't get tested, which we've seen that happen too, where it's a wild animal, so it wanders off and it's out in the forest. It's kind of hard to find a fox of this size in a forest. If that doesn't happen, then from what you're telling me, to keep my brain from going nuts and clogging up my throat and foaming at the mouth and all that stuff from happening, because once it starts, you can't stop it, I'm going to have to be safer than sorry and go get the treatment.
Yes.
Now, I remember hearing when I was a kid that if you got to get the rabies shot, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah, and goes in the stomach. And
right, yeah. It was supposed to be this super painful thing.
Yeah, not these days. It's just like a regular shot. They give you the injection in the arm. What they do is when you come in, they'll give you your first shot and what's known, a substance known as HRIG, human rabies immunoglobulin, essentially antibodies.
Okay.
So the antibodies will fight off the infection until your own antibodies come up and start fighting it. So you would get the shot when you go in, 3rd day, 7th day, and 14th day.
Same shot?
Same shot. So it's kind of
4 times?
Initial shot and then 3 boosters of rabies vaccine.
Wow.
And again, you can get that anywhere up until you show symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're showing symptoms, it's pretty much too late. There's been a couple cases where they were able to treat it after the person came down with symptoms, but I think, as far as I know, there's only been 2 people that survived that.
That's an oddity.
Yes,
yeah, it's an oddity.
And they were not 100% better afterwards either. So.
I remember as a kid getting stuck by a rusty nail. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter if I had a tetanus shot this summer, I'm getting another tetanus shot this summer. It doesn't matter because they were supposed to last so many years, but
yes.
I always got one. It seems like rabies shots would be about the same thing. If I got bit this summer by something, I would have to get rabies shots again next year if I got bit by something.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter whether it's rabbit or not. If I don't have the animal, we haven't got a test on it,
right.
then better safe than sorry.
Yeah, exactly. It's better to get the shot and avoid the symptoms altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you still can have some side effects, but they tend to be mild. You might get fever, which actually is a good thing because it shows that the vaccine's working. Soreness around the arm, but a lot better than coming down with rabies.
Boy, I tell you what, yeah. So, that was great.
Okay, well,
we're done already. Can you believe that?
Yeah, fast.
Look at that rabies talk. How exciting. Yavapai County Health Services Epidemiologist Steve Everett. Again, the website is yavapaihealth.com. As always, thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.